You did everything right. You saved, you maxed out your 403B account, and you built a $2 million portfolio. So why does retirement still feel so unclear? More specifically, where does your paycheck actually going to come from once you stop working? And how in the world do you decide which account to pull from first? Because here's the part that no one explains clearly. That $2 million sitting in your pre-tax 403B, it is not all yours. The IRS is your silent partner. And at some point in time, they stop waiting for you to decide how to use it, and they decide for you. Let me show you what I mean. So picture this. You retire at age 62. Your income drops and life feels lighter. It's much more manageable for you now. And then a few years later, Social Security kicks in. And then at age 73, something strange happens. The first required minimum distribution on a $2 million 403B account is roughly $75,471. Now stack that on top of $54,000 in Social Security, and by the way, 85% of that Social Security becomes taxable. You now have nearly $121,000 in reportable income in a year that you only needed $90,000. So you're paying taxes on income that you never planned to use. So there's a window of time between when you retire and when the IRS takes control. Now, for most CRNAs, it's about 10 to 15 years long. And what you do in that window determines something very real. It can determine whether you send the IRS $580,000 over the next 20 years or $410,000 and keep the $170,000 difference for yourself and your family. Let me make this real for you. Janie is a CRNA just like you, and by age 58, she had $2.1 million in her 403B account, $180,000 in a Roth IRA, and she was making $240,000 a year in income. Now, Janie planned to retire at age 62. When she came to us, she wasn't worried about whether she could retire. She had a different question, one that she could not answer on her own. She asked, where does my paycheck come from once I stop working? And what account should I pull it from, and in what order? Now, the question sounds pretty simple, but in actuality, it's not, because the answer determines how much of your money you actually get to keep. When we walked through Janie's plan, we did not find a savings problem. We found 3 hidden issues, and left unaddressed, those gaps were going to cost Janie somewhere between $80,000 and $150,000 in taxes that she did not have to pay. So let me show you what Janie did not know. The first mistake almost everyone makes is trusting a rule that was never designed for taxes. Now, you have probably heard of the 4% rule. You take 4% from your portfolio each and every year, and your portfolio should last 30 years. For Janie at $2.1 million, that's $84,000 a year, about $7,000 a month. That sounds pretty reasonable. But here's what gets missed with that rule. That number is before taxes. The 4% rule was built from stock market data. It models a portfolio's survival, but it was never designed to account for taxes. Federal taxes on $84,000 at a 24% effective rate leaves Janie $63,840,000 net. Meanwhile, her lifestyle target was $144,000. So right out of the gate, Janie's not even halfway there. Again, not because she didn't save enough, but because the rule did not account for taxes. But guess what? That's not even the biggest problem. The bigger issue is what happens when Janie loses control of the timing. At age 73, the IRS will step in. And again, they decide how much you have to withdraw based on a divisor of your account balance. Now, for a $2 million account, that divisor is 26.5 in the first year. So a first year required minimum distribution is $75,471. So now, even if Janie doesn't need the money, she will be forced to take it. Janie plans to delay Social Security to age 70, which is the right call at her income level. Maximum Social Security benefit at age 70 is roughly $54,000 per year. Now, at 85% taxable, $45,900 of that counts as income. You add the RMD, and Janie's looking at over $121,000 in taxable income the very first year of required minimum distributions. That combination will land a married couple squarely in the 22% federal tax bracket, pushing into 24%. But the bracket isn't even the sharpest edge here. In 2026, a married couple crossing $274,000 in modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI, will trigger the first IRMA surcharge. And again, IRMA is the Medicare income adjustment. If you cross that line by just $1, both spouses will pay $5,840 more per year in Medicare Part B premiums. So it's not a ramp, it's a cliff. And because Medicare uses a 2-year look back on your tax return, the income that you generate today affects your premiums 2 years from now. So Janie now has herself forced withdrawals, Social Security income, and a higher tax bill, all stacked together. And this is what I call the collision, not because of how much Janie's withdrawing, but because of when it all hits her at one time. And then there's a third piece, the one almost no one takes advantage of, even though it's the most valuable window you will ever have. Between the day that Janie retires and those forced withdrawals begin, something unique happens. Janie's taxable income drops because she no longer has W-2 income. She has no required distributions yet. So for Janie, retiring at age 62 and delaying Social Security to age 70, there are 8 years where her only reportable income is whatever she chooses to pull from her portfolio, which means for the first time in, frankly, decades, Janie gets to choose how much taxable income she will create. And this is where strategy lives, because during that window of time, Janie can move money out of her pre-tax 403B and into a Roth account at tax rates that she controls, instead of waiting and being forced to withdraw larger amounts later at higher tax rates on the IRS's schedule. I like to think of it like measuring cups. Right now, you have 12% and 22% cups available to use, and you get to decide how much you will fill them each up. Later, at age 73, the IRS will fill them for you, and they do not ask which cup you prefer to use. So converting $75,000 per year at a 22% rate costs $16,500 that year. If you leave that same $75,000 sitting untouched until Janie's age 73, growing at say 6% a year, that becomes about $134,000. The required minimum distribution on that at a 28% rate costs roughly $37,500. So same dollars, but very different cost. So I hope you can see when you zoom out, all three of these issues point to the same truths. The 4% rule delivers a paycheck 24% smaller than advertised when every dollar is pre-tax. And the age 73 collision forces income on top of income that never has been asked for. And the conversion window, which is the highest leverage tax planning period of one's entire financial life, closes quietly while most CRNAs are enjoying the first years of not working. This was never about how much Janie saved. It was about how her paycheck gets built. But it has to be built before that window closes, not after the first RMD check clears. Because without a plan, your retirement paycheck just becomes whatever your 403B produces, taxed at whatever rate that the calendar decides. But with the right sequence, everything for you can change. Even just a Social Security delay turns a $31,000 annual benefit into $54,000. And it also cuts portfolio withdrawals by $23,000 a year for life. When we solve this for CRNAs, we don't treat retirement like one phase. It's not linear. We break it into three, and we call it the 3-act retirement paycheck. Because your money will behave differently in each stage, and you have to have a strategy to match it. The plan that will coordinate all three of these is what a $2 million pre-tax account is actually capable of generating. Not the default, but the one that you build on purpose. Stage 1, the bridge. Consider this early retirement. This is right after you stop working. Now, your job here isn't growth of your accounts anymore. It's about gaining control. You are deciding where your income will come from so the IRS does not make that decision for you later. Now, ideally, you fund your monthly paycheck without touching the pre-tax 403B account more than necessary. Therefore, you're drawing from after-tax savings and the Roth accounts for living expenses. This is also where Roth conversions begin at lower tax rates and on your terms. If you can begin Roth conversions targeting the 22% bracket, now in Janie's case, this was roughly $60,000 to $80,000 per year. At the same time, you let Social Security grow. The smaller the 403B balance becomes at age 73, the smaller the forced required minimum distribution. Stage 2, the window. This is your mid-retirement years. Now you have Medicare in play. So taxes matter even more because IRMA becomes a factor. Here, Janie will fine-tune things. She continues her Roth conversions, but staying below income thresholds that trigger higher costs, like the $274,000 Maggie ceiling. Social Security arrives at age 70 at $54,000 a year, but conversions to Roth continue through the 22% to 24% tax brackets until the required minimum distribution date arrives on a materially smaller 403 account base. And then there is stage 3, what we call the forced years. This is where Acts 1 and 2 will really pay off. Your RMDs arrive on the reduced balance. The Roth, now fully funded from a decade of conversions, supplements your paycheck tax-free. Social Security at the maximized rate will provide you the inflation-adjusted income floor. And IRMA is managed because the smaller account generates smaller distributions. And therefore, your tax bill is dramatically lower. Let me show you the difference this made for Janie. Now, without a plan, Janie just taking withdrawals, claiming Social Security early, her projected federal tax bill over 20 years was about $580,000. Under the 3-act retirement paycheck scenario, with conversions done intentionally of $75,000 per year in Roth conversions from age 62 to 70, also delaying Social Security to age 70, Janie's projected 20-year tax bill dropped to approximately $410,000. That, my friends, is a $170,000 difference on the same $2.1 million and the same retirement, just a different sequence. By Janie's age 70, her paycheck looked like this: $4,500 from Social Security, $4,000 from her portfolio, so a total of $8,500 per month net. So she stopped working at age 62, and her plan runs on a sequence that is structured, predictable, and tax efficient. She didn't work longer. She didn't save more. She just made one shift. She stopped thinking about her accounts, and she started thinking about her paycheck. So if you take nothing else away from this episode, take these 3 things. First off, the 4% rule understates your tax bill by design when every dollar in your account is pre-tax. Your real paycheck is smaller than the gross math suggests until the sequence is built properly. Second, there is a window right after you retire where you have more control over your taxes than you ever will again. And unfortunately, most people waste it. And third, if you don't build the plan, the IRS has built one for you. Our 3-act retirement paycheck coordinates the bridge between the conversion window and the forced income era into a single sequence worth $100,000 to $170,000 in unavoidable taxes over 20 years on the same $2 million. You spent decades building that account. This is the moment that determines how much of it you actually get to keep. We put together a simple retirement paycheck checklist, and it walks through the exact questions that we solve before a CRNA retires. You'll find it in the show notes, and if you go through it and you realize that you're not completely clear yet on your retirement strategy, believe me, that's normal. That's exactly where most CRNAs are before they build a plan. If the numbers raise more questions than they answer for you, my calendar link is right there as well. You've built the savings. Now it's time to build the paycheck.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.